Good afternoon, distinguished speakers, respondents, moderator, and esteemed participants. My name is Benita Sasha Jayanti, Climate and Energy Diplomacy Program Officer at the Institute for Essential Services Reform, or IESR, and I will be your master of ceremonies for today's webinar. On behalf of the IESR, I would like to warmly welcome all of you to today's webinar entitled Revisiting China's Green Development Investment Footprint in Southeast Asia and Indonesia, Patterns and Prospects. China has become increasingly important player in the global energy transitions, both as a leading producer of clean energy technologies and as a major or a source of overseas investment. At the same time, Southeast Asia and Indonesia have become important destinations for Chinese trade and investments, including through Belt and Road Initiative. Against this backdrop, today's webinar provides a platform to revisit the patterns, scale, and quality of China's green investment in Southeast Asia and Indonesia. We are honored today to have distinguished speakers and respondents joining us today, who will be sharing their perspective on China's investment and engagement in Southeast Asia and Indonesia. Our session today will begin with welcoming remarks and context setting, followed by presentations from our invited speakers, response from distinguished respondent, and moderated panel discussion and Q&A sessions. Before we begin, allow me to share a little bit of housekeeping notes that for all participants, please keep your microphone muted when you are not speaking. During the Q&A sessions, you may submit your questions through the Zoom chat box. We also kindly invite all participants to fill out the attendance and feedback form that we will share in the chat box during the sessions. Without further ado, I would like to invite Bapak Agus Praditya Tampubolon, Director of Climate and Just Energy Transitions at the ISR, to deliver the welcoming remarks and set the context for today's discussions. Pak Agus, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you, Ibu Benita. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, distinguished panelists, responders, and participants, and welcome to the ISR regional webinar with title Revisiting China's Green Development Investment Footprint in Southeast Asia and Indonesia, Patterns and Prospects. Before we begin, I would like to express our sincere appreciation to our distinguished speakers for joining us today and sharing their perspectives. To Bapak Binsan Siregar as Acting Director of Bilateral Cooperation from the Ministry of Investment and Downstream Industry, to Professor Dr. Christoph Nedophil Wang, Professor at the University of Queensland Business School and Director of the Green Finance and Development Center, and last but not least, Dr. Sofwan Albana Koiruzat, Research Fellow at CIRES LPPSP FISIP Universitas Indonesia. Thank you for being with us today. Ladies and gentlemen, China has emerged as one of the world's major economic powers and increasingly as a global leader in the clean energy technologies. China's rapid expansion in solar, batteries, electric vehicles, and other clean technologies is reshaping the global energy market and creating the opportunities for countries seeking to accelerate their own energy transitions. China's overseas investment can potentially play an important role in this transformation. Through the Belt and Road Initiative and other channels, China's capital, technology, and industry capacity have increasingly reached developing economies. This presents an important opportunity to address one of the biggest barriers to the energy transition, which is how to bridge the gap between ambition and available finance and technology. And this is particularly relevant for Southeast Asia and Indonesia. Southeast Asia is among the world's fastest growing economic regions, while Indonesia is positioning itself as a major economic and industrial hub. At the same time, Both Indonesia and ASEAN have strengthened their commitments to decarbonization through renewable energy and pushing for the green economic development. Yet there is a clear challenge that we notice. Our economies remain heavily dependent on fossil fuels, while financing, technological capacity, infrastructure continue to constrain the pace of this transition. And this is where we see the Chinese investment could make a significant difference. But there is a key question that we need to ask here. Is the growing volume of the Chinese investment necessarily translating into high-quality green development? China is already a major economic partner for Southeast Asia and Indonesia. However, the scale of investment alone does not tell us whether these investments are delivering the outcomes that region needs. We need to look beyond how much capital is coming in and ask whether this capital and ask where this capital is going, what technologies and industry this capital supports, what economic value it creates, and what long-term impact that it generates. In other words, the discussion is not simply about the quantity of the investment from China, but we also have to ask about and discuss about the quality of this investment. Does this investment accelerate the renewable energy development? Does this investment strengthen local industrial capacity? Does it create quality jobs? Does it help to close the financing gap for the energy transition? And other questions. And these questions are particularly important as Southeast Asia enters a period of rapid economic and energy transformation. This is the reason why we as is organizing today's discussion, webinar. We want to take a closer look at the evolving footprint of China's green investment in Southeast Asia and in Indonesia. We want to see the patterns. We want to see the opportunities that it can create, the challenges that need to be addressed, and the prospect of this investment could bring moving forward. We hope today's discussion will help us better understand how the Chinese investment can be channeled and leveraged to deliver greater value for Southeast Asia and for Indonesia. But not only in the terms of capital, but also in the terms of the technology transfer, development jobs, and ultimately to support a sustainable energy transition. With that, I look forward to insightful discussions from all the participants. Thank you once again to our distinguished panelists, speakers, and participants for joining us today. Thank you, and I would like to hand over the floor to Ibu Benita.
Thank you, Bapak Agus, for your welcoming remarks and for setting the context for today's discussions. Before we proceed to the presentation sessions, we would like to take a quick group photo. May I kindly invite our speakers, respondent, moderator, and participants to turn on their cameras. We will now move to the main session of today's webinar, and these sessions will be moderated by Marta Jessica Solomasi Mendrova, Research Manager of Policy and Just Transitions at the IESR. Marta will guide us through the presentations from our two speakers, followed by a response from our distinguished respondent, and finally the panel discussion and Q&A sessions. Without further ado, I would like now hand over the floor to Marta. Marta, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you, Benita. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you once again for joining us today in this webinar. We've already heard insightful opening remarks from Bapak Agus, and we are now moving into the core of our discussion of today's webinar, we're visiting China's green development investment footprint in Southeast Asia and Indonesia, the patterns and the prospect. It is my pleasure to moderate our discussion this afternoon. As we already know, the Southeast Asia and Indonesia pursue ambitious energy transition agenda, and the question is no longer about how much the investment needed, but whether what kind of investment can most effectively and support just energy transition and the quality of investment, as Mas Agus already mentioned in the opening remarks. And we also know that at the same time, China has emerged as one of the world's most influential actors in green development and international investment, particularly through the BRI, Belt and Road Initiative. So against this background, we are going to discuss more about this. We are going to deepen our understanding about how Chinese investment evolving currently across Southeast Asia country and Indonesia, and particularly within the renewable energy sectors. And more importantly, we aim to move beyond the quantity of investment flows. We are going to explore more about the fundamental questions about the quality of investment mobilized in our countries in Southeast Asia and Indonesia. So to help us unpack these issues, we are joined by excellent experts representing research and also government perspective. And we are going to listen to two presentations and follow by one response session, as Benita already mentioned previously. So without further ado, I would like to invite our first speaker, Professor Dr. Christoph Nedopil Wang, professor at the University of Queensland Business School, who will present China investment and construction engagement in the BRI or Belt and Road Initiative. Professor Wang, please, the time is yours.
Thank you also very much, Benita and Pak Agus, for the great opening remarks. It's such a pleasure to be here. And thanks so much for organizing this, I think, very timely event and I think interesting opportunities that are rising in green energy finance, and of course also China's role, as well as Indonesia's energy transition landscape. So I will use a presentation to make this as efficient as possible, but I very much look forward, of course, also to the comments and questions of the following speakers that I'm sharing the stage with. And of course, if there are any questions from the audience as well. So here is the presentation. I hope you can see it. I will not go through all slides, but in Australia, it's a tradition that we acknowledge the traditional owners on the land on which we meet, which is for me the Yagora and Turrbal people. And we pay our respects to their ancestors, their descendants, who really kind of have contributed so much to this country, and I think to many of our countries, and recognize the valuable contribution to learning, sharing stories, and the global societies. So you already kind of gave a quick introduction. So I'm a professor at the University of Queensland. I've been also a professor at Fudan University as a visiting professor, and at SOAS University of London, and have worked previously, before coming to universities, actually in finance and entrepreneurship. What I'm discussing today is one of the reports that I've been producing over the last 6 years. Is China's BRI investment report, a Belt and Road Initiative investment report, where we collect data, have our own database on all of Chinese overseas engagements for different sectors and across different countries. We're also looking at the types of financing instruments that China is using, and trying to work with China and the different countries in the global south. How do we accelerate green finance, in particular for the energy transition? And you can see that I've moved institutions from Beijing at the International Institute of Green Finance, then to Fudan University in Shanghai, then to the Griffith Asia Institute, and now to University of Queensland. Before I dig into the data, I do want to also give you an idea of what the data actually are. How do we define, BRI in kind of the presentation that I actually prepared? I looked at all of Southeast Asia. All of Southeast Asia, though, is part of the BRI. So BRI engagements are defined as construction engagements, or what Chinese contractors are the leading EPC, engineering, procurement, and construction company, and investment deals. So where Chinese companies are actually taking ownership in countries that have been identified as being BRI countries, so where we have a different database. So it's about 150 countries. We do validate all our data kind of based on as rigorous kind of methodology as possible, credible sources, signed contracts, announcement of amounts, announcement of place, and we try to include deals that are larger than $20 million. So if it's too small, we're not tracking it. We used to rely on the China Global Investment Tracker, and now, since 2024, have our own database, and we've always expanded the database also from the CGIT. Now, the data that I'm presenting is kind of something that I created specifically for this seminar here. So it's not published anywhere else. The publication is all of the BRI. Here I pulled out the data for the Southeast Asia. And here you can see kind of the overall trend in the different sectors, whether it's energy, real estate, transportation, technology, over the last 13 years. All years, but kind of our full years, except the first half of 2026 in this case. And therefore, I think it's clear that we see kind of the strip, because it's only 6 months for 2026. But indeed, the 2026 H1, the first half, was a record also for any first half since 2013. 2013 is the year that the Belt and Road Initiative was announced. So for Southeast Asia, we have a total engagement of about almost $20 billion compared to $18 billion in 2025. Also quite interesting, kind of the cumulative engagement of China in Southeast Asia is about $327 billion since 2013. Now, as I said, kind of we do distinguish between kind of this construction and investment. Construction, again, where Chinese financiers might kind of play a role, but it can also be domestically financed through loans. And the construction contracts are typically infrastructure projects. Investment projects are, again, where Chinese takes ownership. What we see in Southeast Asia is that particularly the construction contracts rose rapidly, whereas investment dropped. And now kind of we're only looking at first halves to make it a little bit more comparable. So in this case, indeed, it's only the first halves of each year. And so 2025, 2024 saw a lot more investment in Southeast Asia compared to 2026. Meanwhile, construction has been going up quite significantly. I think that's interesting to see. It's not the same case for all different regions. That's a specific situation kind of for Southeast Asia, and probably Southeast Asia is leading the trend kind of with this increased construction and decreasing investment. Here, an important note. Financing of construction deals was typically in his history often done through Chinese loans. So kind of if you think about the Whoosh in Indonesia, a good example, that is, of course, a construction project that the ownership is not with the Chinese. The operation is with the Chinese, but the ownership of the Whoosh is Indonesian, but the financing, most of the money came from China. And so that's really the traditional way of financing for Chinese overseas infrastructure projects. We're seeing some changes around this, that there is more syndicated loans, more diverse sources of financing for these construction deals, and where China is also less willing to go into non-revenue generating construction deals. So even though your Whoosh is revenue generating, there is some, of course, kind of operational issues and financial issues. A good example is the Bangkok-Nakhon Ratchasimi high-speed rail line that is actually not funded through Chinese financing, but all financed through the Thai government and Thai financial institutions. Now, it doesn't mean that kind of there is no support from China. China does provide export finance support, but kind of the project itself is mostly financed through local financing. And I think that's important. Now, I know I'm running out of time. Here is an interesting kind of just also across Southeast Asia. Indonesia is the most important recipient of Chinese engagement by far, followed by Singapore, Malaysia, and Laos. But the distance is quite large, and the focus areas for Indonesia are energy and metals and mining in particular. I'll skip this one just for the sake of time. I think what's here interesting, again, this is all first half of 2020, all first half. So since 2023, we cover a number of different technology sectors because the nature of Chinese engagement has grown with Chinese technological development. And that we're seeing that unlike for the rest of the world, Southeast Asian engagement or Chinese engagement in Southeast Asia in the technology front has decreased. It's stronger in batteries than it was before. But overall, kind of the volume has decreased from 2025 to 2026. Half a year is not a trend, so I would also not overestimate it. Maybe 2025 was just very, very strong. But it's interesting, kind of there's also a shift. Of course, PV is becoming less important because of some kind of overcapacity even within China. And data centers, surprisingly, also not as strong. We would have expected actually to see more data centers in 2026, but 2024 and 2025 were stronger at this. Energy is kind of a very important part of the engagement, and we talked about energy transition before. Here we see kind of I distinguished here between construction and investments. On the top is construction. What does Chinese companies provide for construction? And at the bottom is investment. And that's also Southeast Asia. And unlike for the rest of the world, with more than 50% was green in the green energy space or in the energy space. Southeast Asia is actually dominantly brown. So that's kind of in the investment side, there's significant oil investments in oil processing, and in the construction side, significant gas, a little bit of hydro, some waste to energy, and a little bit of solar. And so that's quite interesting, and that's very different from 2025, where there was mostly solar in investment. So there's kind of currently in the first half of 2026, not a strong appetite for Chinese green investment, and also the demands from the countries for construction project is not necessarily in the green side. Here's kind of just also similarly kind of here we don't look at the technology on the left side, but kind of what does it do? Does it generate electricity? Are we talking about processing facilities, exploitation facilities, and distribution? And what we're seeing in the kind of first half of 2026, there's some processing facilities and also a significant part of generation. But in the generation, again, unlike for the rest of the world, a huge amount of gas. For the rest of the world, it's actually very little gas. So there's more demand from Southeast Asian countries for Chinese construction in gas-fired power plants. And that's really unlike many other parts of the world. So Southeast Asia is not a kind of green energy transition leader when it comes to Chinese engagement. Interestingly, yes, I will wrap it up. So private companies play a much larger role than state-owned enterprises by now. China's kind of overseas engagement is relatively small compared to its size of the GDP. So that's also something that we included now. Germany, Japan, Netherlands, UAE spend a lot more on foreign direct investment compared to their GDP, compared to China. So China has significant growth opportunities still in overseas engagement. And we see that kind of this will be possible across a lot of different sectors, energy, mining, and actually that global headwinds and geopolitical volatility provide some really good opportunities for Chinese companies moving abroad. So I'll stop here. If you want to download the report, you can find that at a number of different places, but also very much looking forward to the next part of this beautiful seminar. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Professor Wang. I'm very sorry to cut you because the time limitation. Thank you so much for sharing the comprehensive presentation in such limited time. And also, it is very significant and very interesting to hear your insights and observation about the latest trends and prospects, maybe latest trends of China's investment, especially in the green energy engagement. And the fact that it is kind of different from the last year trend that is kind of like majorly brown energy in 2026 this year. So all the participants, we will welcome the your questions via chat box, but please just say your institution, share your question, but we'll get to the questions later after we get through all the presentations for today. But if you have question right now, please feel free to type your question right now, but we'll get to it later after we get all the presentation. So moving from Professor Wang, I would like to also invite our second speaker for today, Bapak Sofwan Albana Koirusat, PhD, a research fellow from CIRES LPPSP FISIP Universitas Indonesia. Pak Sofwan will share his insights on unpacking China's engagement in Indonesia renewable energy sectors, the actors, the interest, impacts, and also the leverage. Bapak Sofwan, the time is yours. Please, Pak.
Marta, and thank you very much for ISR for providing this very important opportunity. And also, thank you very much for Professor Wang for providing us with comprehensive insights on Chinese engagement in Southeast Asia, particularly in the energy sector. I would like to continue the discussion by looking more specifically, as Professor Wang has already highlighted, that Indonesia is one country in Southeast Asia where Chinese engagement is the highest, and also in the energy sector. It is also interesting that Professor Wang look at it as part of the CRI engagement. There is a general trend when we are looking about Chinese engagement, especially because of Chinese initiatives such as Belt and Road initiatives are often viewed in geopolitical lens. It is often understood in many literatures, for example, see the expansion of Chinese investment in the region as single and coordinated strategy. Chinese participation in this investment is often framed as instrument to expand Chinese sphere of influence. What we would like to highlight in this presentation is that the study, based on the state transformation literature, argues a little bit different, argues otherwise. We will see that the investment, the Chinese engagement, are not monolithic. They are diverse. And it is important to understand the diversity and the patterns to enable Indonesia benefit effectively from this engagement, rather than looking at it as a single grand design of Chinese engagement. So this research is conducted by CIRES LPPSP with ISR. So in the interest of time, I will skip many parts, but the main idea of this research is we are trying to look at how Chinese investment is in Indonesia, we attempt to map to establish a transparent and replicable framework for identifying Chinese renewable energy stakeholders in Indonesia, identifying and classify the Chinese corporate actors operating across the renewable energy value chain, examining the institutional relationships and cooperation mechanisms, linking Chinese investors to their Indonesian counterparts, assessing broader market relevance and strategic significance of Chinese engagement, and to identify the social, environmental, and developmental impacts of these investments. And this is very timely, very important now, of course, because as already mentioned, China has emerged as the world's leading actor in renewable energy development. It accounts for approximately 85% of global solar module production capacity, 95% of global PV wafer production capacity. In 2025 alone, it deployed 117 gigawatt of onshore wind capacity, a volume roughly equal to Europe's entire onshore wind build-out between 2017 and 2025. And with the BRI, it expand more significantly. For Indonesia, China becomes an important partner, especially because of the recent aim or drive for energy transition. President Prabowo on March this year announced the plan to accelerate the development of 100 gigawatt of solar power capacity. However, deployment on this scale will require access to affordable and abundant solar energy technology, an area in which China holds a clear global advantage. So if we look at the bigger picture as well, China is of course an important partner for Indonesia, but what kind of pattern is going to be happening through this cooperation between Indonesia and China? So that's what we are trying to look at. Let's move to maybe to the findings since we have limited time. Let's go to page 16 maybe. So yes, for the detail, we can look at the report when it is going to be launched. So we identify 25 partnerships, Chinese engagement with different patterns, which can be classified into 4 engagement patterns. Pattern A is integrated package, where single Chinese entity or group occupies EPC contractor and brings policy bank financing and or equity to the same project. This means deepest embeddedness and greatest reputational and political risk exposure. The second pattern, the B pattern, is strategic partnership or IPP ownership. The third factor is pure commercial EPC. The fourth pattern is upstream manufacturing, and the fifth pattern is supplementary or localized supplier of trading distance. Let's move to the next slide. So from this, we look that ownership involving engagement is somewhat more prevalent than pure EPC. So the distribution is quite distributed across the different types. Let's move. So this is what we find also from the study, that it is important to look at Chinese engagement not as monolithic, not as homogeneous. We identify the investment came from 6 actor categories, which can be classified as Chinese state-owned and private entities. Majority of them are actually private actors rather than state actors. Let's move to the next slide. It is also interesting to look at the value chain division of labor, where we don't see a neat division of labor between these actors, showing that there is no, how to say, kind of strategic grand design, but rather initiatives are taken by these different entities for commercial interest, for because of the market forces as well. Let's move. We also look at the technology distribution. It's interesting to see that the state-owned corporations usually owns the old technologies, while the private owns the new one. Let's move to the next slide. We also find Power China as the most frequently engaged actors with 6 linked, 6 projects, and but 0 equity. Let's move to the next slide. The details can be found in the report later. There are also, we also try to make Chinese actors in solar. We can find the list here. They are building plants and own factories. The status can be seen here. Cirata is EPC, so 0% ownership. Sarawang, Bali, also the same. But 49% for Karangkates, Bintan, 100%. Nanshan is the owner, and Longi and Delta Mas 99.9%, and others. Then let's move to the next slide. We are also looking at the pattern between Chinese and Indonesian partners. So 12 from the 32 of the companies deal with state-owned Indonesian companies. 7 of the companies linked to the PLN group alone. So PLN pretty much dominant partner, illustrating the structure of the market in Indonesia. 2 linked to Pertamina Group and Danantara. 7 of 9 Chinese firms holding an Indonesian equity partner co-owned with a state-owned entity. Let's move to the next slide. So we can see also investment from other interaction with other actors as well, by looking at who lends, who owns, and who builds. Let's move. We are also looking at the social impacts. Renewable output does not automatically mean positive impact, because even though the projects are for energy transition, for green energy, it is interacting with local communities. It has impacts on the local communities as well. So it is important to also look at the project more comprehensively. The company is positioned as owner, financier, EPC contractor, technology supplier, or long-term operator, affects local embeddedness, decision-making authority, responsibility, and exposure to social or environmental risks. So there are different levels of risk as well, depending on the pattern of their engagement, of their involvement in Indonesia. There are some cases, 102 alleged violation cases by Chinese companies abroad. More than a quarter reportedly occurred in Indonesia. So it's quite a significant number. According to the Global Development Policy Center, there is also a risk for for hydropower projects. Let's move to the next slide. So we look at several cases to find some benefits and risk in some of this investment. We collected the data from confirmed and documented risk, but of course, there are also more cases which is not really documented. Let's move to the next slide. Yes. 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 So I'm going to the conclusion. Let's move to the next slide. Before next slide. Yes. So what we found, I think the main finding of this research shows that it is important to go beyond the traditional framing of Chinese engagement as monolithic, as something that is driven simply by geopolitical design. But that does not mean that there is no geopolitical consequences. So what we found is that while Chinese engagement has been framed in geopolitical terms, and it's seen that Beijing holds a single and coordinated strategy, we see that the story is a bit different when we are looking at the data. Chinese engagement in Indonesia's renewable energy sector can be read as host country footprint of a disaggregated political economy involving competitive contracting, market expansion, responses to domestic industrial pressures, and in a smaller number of cases, strategic state capital. So it is driven also mostly by commercial and pragmatic interest. So we see the first commercial logic visible in the data is pragmatic contracting. In large share of the projects, Chinese firms provide EPC without holding equity or providing finance. The contractor competes on price and exits on completion. The financiers can be non-Chinese, even entities that is often considered as Chinese rival geopolitically, such as Sumitomo Mitsui at Jatigede or Japan International Cooperation Agency at Lumut Balai. Both funded projects that Chinese state enterprises build. Non-Chinese lenders repeatedly selecting Chinese contractors on commercial grounds. It's hard to square the procurement that follows geopolitical lines. So it fits instead with Jones and Hameri's funding that Chinese state-owned enterprises behave as profit seekers. The second commercial logic originates in China's domestic solar manufacturing overcapacity. Next slide. Maybe next slide also. Next slide. So let's go to this. So although the investment, the engagement cannot be simply read as how to say geopolitical design, but rather more diverse and mostly driven by pragmatic and commercial interests. Because of the size of China and Chinese investment, it is, of course, still having strategic impact. So even without one single design of geopolitical motivation, it has strategic impact with geopolitical design. So we move to the recommendation. Next, final, yes. Yeah, let's go to the so this is the conclusion. Chinese engagement in Indonesia's renewable energy sector is disaggregated rather than unified. Actors are heterogeneous and predominantly private. Interests are multi-layered, commercial survival, competitive contracting, and strategic state capital. Inevitable geopolitical impact does not warrant a geopolitical framing of the engagement itself. This framing disregards the internal fragmentation of the Chinese state. For Indonesia, this actually creates an opportunity and a leverage. A pragmatic partner can be bargained in ways that the executor of strategic master plan cannot. So actually, we could leverage this. So to optimize this leverage, we recommend this following things. Let's move to the next slide. So first, develop a comprehensive industrial policy strategy. Second, develop clear investment standards. Three, push transition from export hubs into integrated local value chains. Four, formalize technology transfer mechanisms in joint venture contracts, including mandating in-country R&D centers. Develop domestic innovation capacity, institutional requirements that investment build long-term skilled labor for the green economy, so it does not stop with the project. The next recommendation, next slide, the final slide. Six, strategically classify projects by impacts on energy security, national security, climate, and social economic development. Develop an integrated, reliable data or information system connecting fragmented investment data across agencies. We found the fragmentation quite visible. 8, leverage resource endowments to open connections to a wider partner pool. 9, ensure good governance, legal compliance, and certainty. And 10, ensure transparency and public participation at all phases of renewable energy projects for just energy transition. Thank you very much.
Already mentioned a lot of aspects and very comprehensive. I really enjoy your presentation, and I think a lot of audience here also appreciate the very thought-provoking presentation from you, especially about the current trend in Indonesia renewable energy from Chinese investment. Thank you so much, Pak Sofwan. We'll move into the next session from our today's discussion. But before hearing the response from Pak Binsan, I would like also to invite all the participants to scan a barcode. We have a barcode in your screen. You can see it on your screen. Please scan the barcode and complete a feedback form. For us, ISR, it is very important to help us improve our future webinars and also engagement. And once you complete the feedback form, you will receive an email from ISR containing link to all of today's presentation. Because we know it is a lot of information today's, and we probably couldn't understand all of it. So we share the materials for you, all of the audience here once you already complete and finish the feedback form. So we will now move into the respondent session. Our respondent, Pak Binsan Siregar, is Acting Director of Bilateral Cooperation, Ministry of Investment and Downstream Industry, BKPM of Indonesia. Pak Binsan, hopefully you can provide a reflection or respond another perspective on the findings and issue raised by our previous speakers. And what do you think the government of Indonesia saw this opportunity of Chinese investment? Pak Binsan, the time is yours, please, Pak.
Yeah, thank you, Bu Marta, and thank you, everyone. First of all, thank you for ISR for having me in this webinar, and also distinguished speakers, Professor Wang and also Pak Sofwan. The presentation are very insightful for me, especially. So probably to provide my response in this webinar, if I could share some slide presentation as well. So of course, allow me to share a perspective looking at the important trends in Chinese investment across Indonesia and Southeast Asia. Perhaps three main points. The first is how we see the opportunities and risk, and then the second, how Indonesia can maximize the opportunities, and the third, what policy or other instrument that can help us capture greater value. So from the Indonesian perspective, Chinese investment needs to be viewed within the broader context of our transformation agenda toward Golden Indonesia 2045, a sovereign, developed, and sustainable archipelagic country. And our current development strategy emphasizes economic productivity, the green economy, digital transformation, domestic and global economic integration, and importantly, of course, downstreaming processing to increase value added domestically. So if we can see the next slide, this is particularly important because the next slide, please. Because Indonesia needs, I think we can skip this one. Next slide. Needs around, yes. So for 2025 to 2029, Indonesia needs around 814 billion US dollar investment, both for domestic and foreign direct investment. Absolutely, this is a very substantial amount of investment. So this is we need this one to support the economic growth objectives. And however, we need investment not simply in terms of the volume or the quantity, but investment that contribute to the productivity, competitiveness, technology, and then employment and sustainable development. So we are talking not only the quantity, but also the quality of the investment that we will have. And then if we can see the next slide, we have a figure of investment, Chinese investment progress in Indonesia. Again, this background, so China is clearly an important investment partner. During 2021 to the first half of 2026, Chinese investment in Indonesia reached 38.34 billion US dollar. So with China among the top 3 FDI contributors over the past 5 years. And importantly, as we can see in this figure, that the investment is already contributing to Indonesia's industrial transformation, with 45% concentrated in base metal processing, followed by transportation, warehousing, and telecommunication, chemical and pharmaceutical, residential and industrial areas, and also electricity, gas, and water. So this is, of course, a very interesting data for us. How can we see that the contribution of investment from China is already quite significant, especially in the last 5 years. And so from this data, there is a significant opportunity to leverage China or Chinese capital, technology, and market connection to support Indonesia's industrialization, downstreaming, infrastructure development, and participation in global value chains. But of course, this opportunity also requires to manage potential risks. Let's say, if we can see the concentration of investment in certain sectors and also locations, for example, as we can see in this figure, mostly in Central Sulawesi and North Maluku, means that we need to pay close attention to the economic resilience, and then environmental and social sustainability, and the distribution of the benefits for the countries. So one concern is we have to avoid excessive concentration, absolutely, by encouraging investment to be distributed well throughout the nation. And also, other than that, to support the supply chains of the resiliency, it is also important that we should avoid excessive dependency as well on a single source of technology. So our principle is how to diversify investment, not only depending on one source of investment, but from diverse source of investments. And especially looking at the current, geopolitical environment, so we see that diversification is also important. Indonesia's objective is not to reduce its investment cooperation, but to ensure that our investment portfolio remains diversified, competitive, and resilient. And the second thing that, if we can go to the next slide, of course, how can Indonesia accelerate and maximize the opportunities? I think the key is move from simply attracting investment toward attracting the right investment into the right sectors and locations, and creating stronger linkages with the domestic economy. So the government, through the Ministry of Investment and Downstream Industry, or BKPM, is already pursuing several measures focusing on targeting investment promotion and then investment friendly policies, mapping investment opportunities throughout the countries that are ready to offer, absolutely. And also we try to make sure that all these identified projects or potential opportunities, also looking at the importance of ESG practices. And then strengthening bilateral and regional cooperation, as well as promoting downstream investment in green economy, blue economy, and as well as food security. This is particularly relevant to China's investment. We have, if we can see the next slide, actually, we have identified several potential sectors that can be doing in partnership with Chinese investment. For example, Indonesia has enormous renewable energy potential, around 3,687 gigawatt, including solar, and then hydro, wind, geothermal, bioenergy, and other forms of new and renewable energy. And right now, only around 30.1 gigawatt has been utilized. So it's very, very small compared to the potential that Indonesia has. So we therefore see considerable room for green investment and also partnership with Chinese investment. But again, our ambition should go beyond simply bringing in capital for individual projects. We should encourage investment that develops domestic manufacturing capacity, and then technology, skills, local supply chains, and Indonesian participation in global value chains. So these are several priority sectors that can be offered, of course, to all investors around the world, including Chinese investment. And as we can see, also we are focusing on digital economy, as the Professor Christoph also mentioned. That's also part of interesting sector that Chinese investment looking at the moment. And if we can go to the next slide as well, we have also the same principle applies to downstreaming program. If we can see the next slide, that the government estimate around 618 billion US dollar of. Can we go to the next slide, please? So we have here potential investment in downstreaming for 28 commodities. With we already estimate investment around 618 billion until 2040. So this cover strategic resources and commodities across minerals, oil and gas, or energy, and then roadmap also indicate the potential for around 3 million direct job. So for us, the question is not only how much investment can attract, it is how much additional value, technology, employment, and industrial capability can Indonesia capture from the investment. So that's why downstreaming programs or downstream industry is also one of our top priority right now. And then maybe we can go to the next slide for the quality investment in terms of distribution. We should increasingly make this instrument targeted and strategic, as we can see in terms of policy and other instruments that we are having right now. So we can rely on a single instrument actually. So the first, in terms of regulatory, I would emphasize that the government of Indonesia right now has undertaken significant reforms in improving business licensing through online single submission system as an integrated and online platform for business licensing in Indonesia. So it has been very easy to do business in Indonesia in terms of this spirit. And and also investment policies are implemented consistently across different levels of government. So it will provide a more predictable, integrated, and responsive to different levels of business risk. By law, licensing requirements are no longer one size fits all, with simpler requirements for low risk business and more stringent requirements for higher risk businesses. So no one size fits all in this case. And in addition, through government regulation number 28, 2025, also strengthen certainty through service level agreement for business licensing in Indonesia. Again, of course, a single instrument regulatory agenda is not enough, but we also have to work with other aspects. If we can go to the other to the next slide. So to make sure that the quality investment can also be supported, so especially in terms of the distribution, we should increasingly make this instrument, which is for right now, Indonesia has 180 industrial estates distributed across the country. So these are actually strategic investment location for investor, and these industrial estates we expect to be new growth centers. So as a strategy for our country to distribute investment, and of course, in terms of infrastructures, utility, even to make sure that the development of these new economic zones be supported by, let's say, green investment, green infrastructures and utilities are very important for the country. So we can see that the opportunities here are quite huge for Indonesia. And also, other than industrial estates, we also have around the next slide 25 special economic zones. If we can see the next slide. So we have 5. Okay. Right. All right. Thank you. So, of course, with this all potentials and opportunities that we have, we are very optimistic that we could work together with Chinese investor and investment. But again, our main point is how do we make sure that the investment serves in Indonesia's long-term development objectives, especially sustainability, while maintaining strategic flexibility. So we welcome Chinese investment and see significant potential and deepen cooperation, particularly in green development and downstream industries. Thank you. That's all from our side. Over to you, Bu Marta.
Thank you so much, Pak Binsan Siregar, for your comprehensive also presentation. It is very thought-provoking, and it gives us like a lot of another perspective from the government side. And I already see a question from the chat box, but maybe before reading the question from the audience, I would like also to welcome another question, probably another one from the audience. If you have any question, please type your questions, and also more importantly, your organization and introduce yourself in the chat question to Pak Binsan, because your presentation is very comprehensive. It's very interesting to me to see how Indonesia moving very strategic into like attracting investment, and also trying to make the investment mobilized efficiently, or maybe more optimum. But my question is, since Pak Sofwan already mentioned about the social and environmental risk on several projects, including the renewable energy projects, for us to take into account the social and environmental risk into like the measurement of investment, and already part of our government measurement criteria for attracting and also maximizing the investment opportunity from China. Do you think we already incorporate the social and impact assessment, let's say, in our strategic action and our program in order to attract and maximize the investment? Pak Binsan, do you have any idea on that question, please?
Thank you, Bu Marta. As I already also share in my presentation that Indonesia is very concerned with the economic development agenda, especially in making sure that the sustainability aspect of the investment can be done, can be conducted by the country. So in our program, of course, especially in identifying potential projects for Indonesia, let's say right now we have actually a list of potential projects or investment opportunities ready to offer to the investors, and in the preparation of these investment projects, we try to accommodate aspects that are very important in sustainability aspect, especially in ESG elements, and also the sustainable development goals. So we try to make frameworks for these projects to be included in the identification of these projects. I think that's my response to the question, Bu Marta.
Thank you, Pak Binsan, for your response. Moving forward, maybe I would like to ask Pak Sofwan to respond a question from our audience here in the chat box from Ferry Tobing. The question here is, are there any benefits such as meeting TKDN, the local content requirement standards, if the Chinese solar panel investment are made in Indonesia compared to simply importing solar panels from China? So I think the main question here is about the competitiveness of Chinese manufacturing and Indonesia. Pak Sofwan, could you please respond to this question?
Thank you very much, Marta, and thank you very much, Ferry, for the question. I think the question is about what is the goal of our development itself. If we are only looking at the efficiency, looking for the cheapest one, of course, importing them directly from China will be cheaper. But we are looking at the big picture here as well, because energy is something that is strategic, and because Indonesia is also looking to develop its own capacity, its own industrial capacity in this renewable energy sector. We could not rely on external actors continuously, because the demand for energy will continue to be growing. We also need to have the industrial capacity domestically to ensure that in the long term, the energy transition drive will continue and will benefit the Indonesian public more sustainably. Because if you only buy the solar panel from China or any other technologies from China, it might be cheaper, but at the same time will put the productive capacity. We are a productive power if we are looking at the terms used by Frederick List. will not grow. And I think, as Vincent has mentioned, Indonesia has the vision to ensure that we try also to develop our industrial capacity as well in this strategic sector. For the energy transition agenda, this will also be better, because if Indonesia have the capacity, have a stronger capacity to produce the renewable energy technologies, that will also ensure the sustainability in the agenda. Of course, as an infant industry, Indonesia will produce a little bit more expensive, but that will go down as the capacity grows. So if a kind of infant industry, which at the early stage we need some support from the government, including through the TKDN regulations. So I think it depends on the goal of the development. If it is only for efficiency, it might not be the most rational one. But if we are looking at the longer term, in terms of developing industrial capacity, ensuring sustainability of the energy transition agenda, as well as pushing technology transfer and ensuring the benefit of green economy, I think this is the path that it's important to take to ensure that there is a technology transfer, that our industry is also growing. Also, although in the beginning it might be more expensive, but that's the price of development that we need to take for the early period. And I think it is important to not looking at it merely in the lens of efficiency or market, because of the nature of the energy as a strategic sector. Thank you very much.
Sofwan. So we need to look beyond the current economic benefits, right? We need to look longer and longer term. So in your point, I think the competitiveness should not be a challenge, but right now it is a valid challenge. But we need, as a country, we need to like have a strong national interest and strong strategy on how we are going to move towards past this challenge. I would like also to ask Professor Wang this kind of similar question, probably, but into like a region context. Do you think manufacturing and also local value added is like currently optimum in many countries in Southeast Asia as an impact from Chinese investment? Do you have an observation regarding our previous discussion?
No, it's very good, and I think kind of I really liked what the panelists had to say. We're doing a study on this, and also when it came to Indonesia as part of the study, to look at kind of all different Asian economies, how they're trying to strengthen their green manufacturing to create jobs. I think everybody wants to create jobs. Everybody wants to be part of the green transition, whether it's the energy or also new energy vehicles. And energy now is so exciting because you have the wind, the solar, the batteries. So there's a lot of opportunities in a sense. We find it across Asia. There are a number of different countries. There are the countries that are hugely dependent on imports to strengthen their green transition. If you think about Pakistan, they've been one of the fastest kind of success stories, the biggest success stories in the green transition, thanks to significant imports of solar panels, and now starting with batteries, with very little domestic production. So very successful in the green transition, but not so successful in green job creation. There are other examples like Thailand that has been quite successful in attracting investment from China for green manufacturing, in particular solar, but in the end didn't use any of these panels that were assembled in Thailand locally. They are importing all of the domestically used solar panels from China because the Chinese solar panels are significantly cheaper. So all of the domestically produced stuff in Thailand is for export. Now, if the export crashes, what you did, then the utilization of these factories goes down. And there's a third type of countries, which is countries like India, that have a very strong domestic demand and a very strong domestic manufacturing system. Now, Indonesia is a very interesting case because Indonesia theoretically has a very kind of strong potential, also kind of very strong relations with China. And there are some, of course, some investments in green manufacturing, and there's a local content requirement. Kind of, if I were a policy advisor to the Indonesian government, I would kind of go either of one ways. I would say, be really consistent with your green growth strategies, particularly in the energy space, and be more ambitious. No investor will come to China, to Indonesia, if there is not a strong demand situation. From an export situation, unfortunately, Indonesia is not competitive at this time. It's cheaper to produce in other countries, including, of course, China, but also potentially in Vietnam and Thailand, compared to Indonesia. So the output, the efficiency of the output is higher in other countries. So if kind of investors will not come to Indonesia and set up a manufacturing facility necessarily for export. So then it's all about domestic consumption. Unfortunately, kind of Indonesia's energy transition is not really strong enough to really attract a lot of green manufacturing investments. And that's kind of, and therefore the local content requirement is nice in principle, but it doesn't kind of really accelerate kind of enough the green energy transition by setting up local manufacturing and then growing the energy transition. You have to have, the demand situation has to be very clear, and the demand situation needs to be strengthened.
Yeah, that's very interesting. Thank you so much for your response and observation, sharing your observation, Professor Wang. I think I would like to hear a direct response from Pak Binsan. Do you have any thoughts about the recommendation and sharing from the Professor Wang observations about the importance of creating local demand first? And Indonesia, we still have not really have that level very high yet in our demand, local demand. Do you think it is aligned with how our government see it as a strategic approach, or do you have any thoughts about that? And also, Pak, maybe you could simultaneously answer the question from the chat box. I'm sorry for asking too much, but yeah, you can respond what Professor Wang already mentioned, and you can also maybe respond to our question from chat box from Bambang Hendrawan from Batam Polytechnic. They ask about how Indonesia can ensure that the investment from China can leverage the job opportunity in Indonesia, especially the research program in Indonesia. Pak Binsan, please.
Yeah, thank you, Bu Martha, and also the speakers. We really appreciate all the policy recommendations and suggestions. I believe that these recommendations can be taken by the government for further enhance, the development or the strategy for increasing investment and also in supporting the green development agenda of the country. And yeah, I think Professor Wang is correct in terms of how can we make sure that we can create the demand for the green energy transition or investment or projects in Indonesia. And now we are working on that, as I said, that now we are focusing on distributing the development as well as investment throughout the nation by developing, several new growth or new economic growth centers. As you know, that Indonesia is very huge and also consists of many islands as an archipelagic country. So we have the potentials, and how can we develop this potential into a project ready to offer for investor. That's of course one of our big homework. Right now we are working on all stakeholders involved in this sectors, as my agency is focusing on coordinating and also communication with all stakeholders to make sure that we can provide these potentials into opportunities for investor. We have what we call RUPTL, which is a project list of projects for electricity businesses in Indonesia, and of course how to to create this into a real projects opportunities to support, as I said, that we have the spirit to distribute investment, to encourage more investment into many regions by developing industrial estates or new growth centers, special economic zones. They all need what we call energy utilities, and of course later on we try to encourage that the development of this area can be supported by not only the traditional energy sources anymore, but with the new and renewable energy. I think some industrial parks also have moved forward to a greener industrial parks in Indonesia by utilizing potential of green energy that they have in that regions. So we work on that, and I believe in terms of business process in Indonesia. We also, as I shared in my previous presentation, that we focus on we have actually did so much reforms in terms of business process in Indonesia, but of course different sectors, different stakeholders, we are still continue to to integrate all these systems to make sure that any bottlenecks of investment in Indonesia can be solved or can be facilitated well. But again, my organization focus on facilitating investors end-to-end services. So if including in the promotion, so of course we will work on that area as well to make sure that the demand can be built, can be created throughout the country. And move to the questions from the chat box. I see. Give me times. Yeah, Bang, I think. Can you read the question, Bu Marta, if you could? Yeah, thank you.
Chinese green investment builds domestic technological capabilities beyond creating operator level jobs. So it is more into like how the investment could create high quality jobs, and also how it could affect our development in research, and also in engineering, and also domestic suppliers. So it kind of related to our discussion about the local content.
Thank you for the question. Maybe in general, I could respond by saying that, of course, Indonesia or the government provide several incentives for investment or for investor to establish business in Indonesia, not only in terms of fiscal, absolutely, as we have so many types of fiscal incentives, including those who participating in R&D activities. We also have a certain incentive for them, and also for those companies who conduct, let's say, vocational apprenticeship program. We also have quite interesting incentive for these activities that are conducted by businesses. But other things, of course, in terms of non-fiscal incentives, we also provide several facilities or facilitation program. So to make sure that matchmaking, or how can investor or foreign investors, not only from China, can collaborate with our local businesses or local partners. So by this program, of course, we support the collaboration to make sure that the job creation and the supply chains process can be helped by the government for any investor, including from China. Maybe that's my response. Thank you, Martha.
Thank you, Pak Binsan. I hope it answered your question, Pak Bambang, from the chat box. Also, we received another questions from Ali Hardana. They put several questions in the chat box, but the most interesting question is maybe about the EV. So the questions here is, can Chinese investment in Indonesia's EV ecosystem can be considered green development if the production process still causes environmental impacts? What indicators should be used to assess whether the investment is truly sustainable? I think our previous speakers share more about the electricity and power system sectors and renewable energy sectors, but I think it is very interesting to see and to hear about their observation and also their response to this question about the EV and nickel industry. Maybe I would like to firstly ask this question to Professor Wang. Do you have any observation regarding this question, Professor?
So it's a great question. We've been kind of for many years, kind of not me only, but many experts have been thinking about how to classify green projects. And I think there's been a lot of developments over the last years in terms of a kind of a pure taxonomy to say this is a green project, to a transition taxonomy. What are the activities that have to happen in order for a typically brown or a kind of environmentally harmful project to move to a more environmentally aligned project? One of the things that I contributed to and led in China was what's called the Green Development Guidance and the Traffic Light System for the Belt and Road Initiative. It was published in 2020, end of 2020, where we tried to kind of come up with a system for the Chinese government and with the Chinese government to understand that many projects are kind of potentially green, but potentially brown, depending how they're implemented. To give you a separate example from kind of the nickel, hydropower. Hydropower itself is considered a zero carbon energy, but in fact, if you're producing hydropower or creating a huge dam in a nature resort and a nature reservoir, you're destroying a lot of nature. So even though the technology might lead to a relatively low carbon footprint from an kind of electricity generation, the way you implement a project hugely matters. And that's the same in nickel. It's not the question it's not only the question whether a specific project is green or not. It's very much about the process standard. How do you implement a project? Do you do environmental due diligence? Do you have environmental mitigation strategies? What type of electricity are you using in order to produce something? So there's a lot of thought around this, and the organizations that really put a lot of effort in this originally was the IFC and the World Bank. And it came up with a lot of environmental and social impact standards, and then also specific sector standards, and it includes minings and metals processing. So there are good international standards in order to reduce the environmental harm of these activities, where we know that, of course, they're not great for the environment. All of our economic activities that we do is pretty much not good for the environment, whether we drink coffee or whether we drink nickel. The question is always, how can we mitigate risk from the beginning? So reduce the risk, avoid the risk, and if need be, compensate for the risk.
Thank you so much for your response, Professor Wang. I think I would like also to hear the response from Pak Sofwan about this question. And maybe, Pak, you can also share about your understanding about the other sectors in renewables, because I think we can ask a similar question to another commodities in energy. Please, Pak Sofwan.
Yes, thank you very much, Mbak Martha, and thank you very much. This is a very excellent question, and I think this is a question that we all need to answer, especially because I think not only in Indonesia, but it's quite visible in Indonesia because it's closer to us, and many renewable energy projects or green energy projects are actually entangled with dirty sources. So it's not so clean and not so green if we look at the bigger picture. But it's important to not look at it in a black and white manner as well, because it is, how to say, something that often involves trade-offs and calculation. I think the most important thing to address this paradox is to ensure that all of the risks and consequences are identified, and this identification involves public participation since the beginning. So those who benefit and those who pay for the cost are, how to say, distributed in a just manner. It's not decided only by one party who benefit, but the other one receive the negative impacts of it. I think another point related to this is, of course, the importance of transparency, because no matter what standards you use, if the information are incomplete, the data are difficult to access, it is then difficult to measure the impact as well. So public participation, transparency, and transparency is something that is important. The third, I think, is also on the governance of these renewable energy projects, because many of the negative impacts, environmental impacts or social impacts, are happening because many of the standards are not followed. There are standards, there are, for example, things that are actually put in place to safeguard against such environmental and social impacts, but because of the bad governance, uh, then the standards does not work. So I think it is important to not only looking at what standards should be applied, but how we can ensure public participation, transparency, and good governance to ensure that these standards actually works for the society and for the green energy transition. I think this is also relevant not only in the EV sector. I'm looking also, for example, at the palm oil. This is also another paradox, right? I mean, the demand for palm oil was increasing because of the biofuel is part of this renewable energy drive. But because of this, then you have the expansion of the palm oil industry, which ironically also negatively affecting the environment because the rapid expansion of palm oil contribute to deforestation and land use change, forest fire, etc., which is creating negative impacts as well. This does not mean that biofuel should be stopped at all or that palm oil should be stopped at all. But it is important to put the development of these different commodities, different energies in place in a larger picture, in better governance with transparency and public participation. I think that will be the key.
Thank you, Pak Sofwan, for highlighting several important aspects for us this afternoon. So looking at the time, I think we are already at the end of our discussion. So I'm personally very happy to hear the presentation, the discussions, and the response from today's webinar. And please allow me to briefly summarize several key takeaways that I have already noted here. Firstly, about the Chinese investment as a very important role in Southeast Asia and Indonesia development agenda, especially the green development agenda, and also the second about the reminder about the successfulness of investment is not only measured by the number, but also about the benefits from the recipients countries, such as the domestic value creation, about the job creation, about the institutional strengthening, and also the outcomes, overall outcomes in many sectors in the recipient countries, which are very closely related to how the country itself have a very consistent strategy in their development, and also very have a clear direction in the investment. The demand side is also very important in accordance to create the value, the local value in the national level. And also the final keynotes that I already wrote on my notebook is about the importance of aligning a lot of policy in trade, in foreign policy, in institutional policy, because at the end of the day, it is not one aspect or one sector's interest, but we are talking about a complex national development strategy. So it should involve a lot of people, a lot of sectors, and most importantly, not only the government, but the people, the community around the renewable area, around the mining area, and also needs to complement by the great transparency and data availability to make us, make the government, make the people understand how to measures the outcomes and impact from the Chinese investment in several countries in Southeast Asia. So hopefully I'm not mistaking any points or like missing any points there. But on the behalf of the organizing team, I would like to extend my appreciation to all of the speakers here and also the participants for your active engagement today. And with that, I will conclude our panel discussion today, and I will hand over the session back to Benita, our MC. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Martha, for moderating today's session and guiding us through such an insightful discussions. Special thank you to our distinguished speakers, Professor Dr. Christoph Nedovil Wang and Dr. Sofwan Albana Hoyrusa for sharing your valuable insights and perspective. We would also like to extend our sincere appreciations to our respondent, Pak Binsan Siregar, for enriching today's discussion with your reflections and perspective. And of course, thank you to all participants for your active engagement and thoughtful questions throughout the sessions. Before we conclude, I would like to kindly remind everyone once again to complete the attendance and feedback form that has been shared in the chat box, and you may also access the form by scanning the QR code displayed on the screen. As we come to the end of today's webinar, we hope this session has provided meaningful insights into the evolving patterns and prospects of and stronger collaborations between policymakers, researchers, and other stakeholders in advancing the green investment in the region. On behalf of the Institute for Essential Services Reform, or IESR, thank you very much for your participations and have a great afternoon, everyone. And we look forward to seeing you again in our future IESR events and webinar. Good afternoon and thank you, everyone.